Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Politically Depressed. As always, I'm your host, Ayman McAdam. So today, the UN announced that if nothing changes in the next 48 hours, up to 14,000 babies could die in Gaza because of starvation, because of the Israeli blockade, which has now gone on for 79 days since the Israelis unilaterally broke the ceasefire agreement to continue and accelerate their genocidal campaign in Gaza. This blockade is total. Gaza has been experiencing some shape or form of blockade since 2006. Some may say even since 1967. But regardless, right now, people in Gaza, the Palestinians of Gaza, are facing just the final pushes of their extermination. And the Israelis are saying it out loud. And they're saying out loud that the world is doing nothing to stop them. Smotrich, the finance minister, functionally the viceroy of the West Bank, who is in the war cabinet, he says that no one is stopping them. And to quote him from a speech he gave yesterday, "Now we conquer, we cleanse, we settle." These are open declarations of things we've already known. The writing has been on the wall for at least a decade. This is a tipping point. And you even see Western governments now changing their tone. You see media outlets that would never name the perpetrator now saying this is because of the Israeli blockade. And a part of it has to be the fact that it is just untenable. That the Israelis, in their genocidal mania, have pushed even beyond their most fanatic supporters' ability to justify what is just open cleansing, open mass murder of everybody. And we're witnessing this. And I really don't know what more there is to say. There really is nothing to say. I'm doing this episode because I feel like I have to. Ever since the last week, I've been feeling a bit numb. I think today's news, I think that number. I think watching Bisan's latest 2 videos, especially the one where she's saying this is our final message. That this is not only the worst moment of the current genocide in Gaza, but the worst moment in Palestinian history, in the entirety of the Palestinian struggle, of the Palestinian people as a people. And through the numbness, I try to still do work. And I find the despair I feel in these moments obviously very hindering. And I know a lot of other people are feeling it too. And we're stuck in this constant phase wherein it feels like there's nothing left to do but despair. But that is the last thing that we should be doing. Because people in Gaza cannot despair. They face imminent death, imminent murder at the hands of the Israeli state. And what Bisan said in that video is that we need to stop the bombs from getting there. And one thing that I do all the time is think about what can people be doing? What can I be doing? What other forms, what other acts? There are obviously a lot of things that it is not prudent to talk about so openly and blatantly. And I hope people are having some creative conversations in private. Because this just cannot stand. This brutality, this monstrosity, this mass murder, this just brazen genocide. Brazen. I don't have to go through all the facts. I feel it's so painful And I know there's a necessity to do it, but it's just so painful to go through the facts, to go through the forms, to state things, essentially trying to persuade anyone who's not yet convinced or aware or just, has a heart to feel and to see. And I feel like there's a kind of moral death when it becomes a matter of discussion or debate. I don't know. It is so fucking painful, and this moment is so difficult, and I'm just so enraged and heartbroken, and I'm absolutely besides myself. And I just don't really have many constructive things or analyses or anything. This has been going on steady for almost 2 years now. And it's just, I don't know. And I think for a lot of us in the region, for whom this did not start 2 years ago, even at an emotional level, at a political level, at a kind of active engagement level, it's just on top of so much of the violence and destruction that we've seen in the region, honestly, over the last decade. And I don't know. I also just feel so constantly betrayed by people who talk about Palestine, who openly, call this a genocide and are active in some shape or form, but then go out and smear Palestinians and Syrians and Lebanese. And to me, these people who, again, I've talked about this so much, but honestly, on top of everything, I've just been unable to compartmentalize my fucking rage at all these anti-Arab, anti-Israel people. There are a lot of them, and they fucking piss me off. And it's just because there's so many parallels with what's happening in Gaza, with what happened in Syria. And, it's just so difficult to compare because of the fucking scale at the moment. But so there's just this fucking frustration where you see people talking shit about survivors of literally Assad's gulags, and still talking shit about fucking humanitarian workers. And they sound exactly like Zionists. They sound exactly like Zionists when they talk about aid workers and medical workers and doctors, and saying they're all, there's just some big conspiracy against them. Fucking, I'm so filled with rage and frustration and grief. We have not progressed. I see shifts. I see, obviously, these people in the streets. There's things that are happening that are unimaginable that they happened 3 years ago. But there are so many core, fundamental things that need to shift that aren't. The shift away from these discourses and these narratives, this sort of understanding the need for not just sort of protests, but I feel so ridiculous talking about revolution in this moment of such intense defeat and humiliation and frustration and shame and powerlessness. I refuse constantly to reckon with the powerlessness. But sometimes I just see things online that I'm like, this is such, not just a distraction, that this is a sign that there are so many things that need to shift in our thinking and our organizing. And it's not just about beliefs, right? It's not just about understanding. A lot of people know what's happening, but they're just not doing anything about it. They're not even thinking about how they can do anything about it. And I just, there's so many ideas of persuasion and trying to and it's obviously bullshit. People don't get persuaded from online stuff. People just stay online and kind of get more entrenched in their own bullshit. And so I never try to convince Zionists. I also never try and convince Assadists, any of these fucking anti-Arab, anti-Israel bunch. Because I know they're not convincible. They functionally act as though they're cults. And so how to counter that, we need creative strategies. And I don't know. I don't know how all of that sounds. I honestly feel like such a mix of discompartmentalized, a kind of just a rage and a frustration and a fear. And I'm constantly thinking what's happening and what needs to be done and what's the space between that. and how can we get there? 40. I can't even, that first sentence, I just jumped away from it. 14,000 babies. There's really not much to say. There's not any more you can unpack there. This is just such an injustice, such a tremendous, earth-shattering crime. I really have very little to say. I have so much, there's such a weight on my chest that I need to unpack and let out. But nothing helps. Because if the reality stays that way, unless something very major shifts, which it doesn't seem like it's going to, because it's not only this blockade, but just like yesterday or 2 days ago, the Israelis announced their new ground assault, Gideon's Chariot. And they've been killing 100 Palestinians on average a day in Gaza for the last 5 days. And this new thing of this mass starvation comes on top of the mass killings from airstrikes, from drone strikes, and now with the sort of soldiers re-engaging fully. These are just unspeakable horrors. And it's just, I really can't believe it. I don't know. I don't know if there is a silver lining. I feel like there's constantly a need to do more. And I think a lot of people are unsure what that more means. And I'm definitely not here to tell you because I don't know. I live in a very specific circumstance. And I think everyone needs to think about their own circumstances and what can be done with the people around them, with their communities, with whatever movement they're around, whatever access you have. Something. Think about it. Let it keep you up at night. Let it be something that preoccupies you. The only way I can convince people sometimes, even though I find this kind of an ultimately unhelpful strategy, but it seems to kind of work sometimes, at least for the moment, or in the moment, is if this were your family, if someone was trying to assault your mother, what would you do? What steps would you take? How far would you go? Would you just sort of do it a little bit and then move on and then do something else and then go back to it? Or is it something that you basically do as much as you can? And then only once you know that's as much as you can, and then you have to wait for some shit, then you fucking, I don't know, do your thing for a little bit. But it is on the forefront of your mind. It is the thing that keeps you up at night. And you're constantly thinking, how can I save her? How can I protect her? And so I think that's, but here obviously we're taking a much more political sense. There's not like an individual. So we are talking about movements. We are talking about revolt. We're talking about resistance, which takes many, many different forms and has many different effects. And I think I still see a kind of stubbornness to reckon with what does work and doesn't work. I really don't know. The Palestinians in Gaza have been very clear that there is no bigger warning. There is no, alarm that can be louder. This is it. This is the final push. And it is as though the genocide has only just begun, and that we need to bring that same energy. This cannot stand. This cannot pass. This cannot happen. And as we know, if this is allowed to happen, we are all doomed. if this type of violence, if this type of extermination is allowed to pass and allowed to happen, then no one is safe. I've really got nothing more to say. There's just so much that's just impossible to say. But I guess I'll wrap it up there. Please, wherever you are, do whatever you can. If nothing else, speak up. If nothing else, donate. There is actually a very trusted and important organization called Gaza Mutual Aid. They do community kitchens. And although no supplies are getting into Gaza, there are still supplies within Gaza. And they are very expensive, incredibly expensive. And so I will be donating after this to Gaza Mutual Aid. And I'll put the link in the description below. And I urge you to support me in supporting them. There really is no more urgent time or issue. And so with that said, that's it for me today. And I'll see you all next time.